Ladies and gentlemen, Heartlands Media has been around here since 2017, and we've been interviewing a lot of awesome congressional candidates and activists, and I'm proud to introduce a longtime friend of the show, a real progressive, a real front runner, a fighter who's unapologetic. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, give it up for Anthony Clark, who's running in the 7th Congressional District against Danny Davis. Anthony Clark, welcome to our new studio.
Hey, this is so awesome to be here. Thank you for having me, kid. This is wonderful. Shout out to Heartlands, longtime supporter and believer, and you all have been a supporter of myself as well. So truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I think it's very important for our viewers to know. I mean, you guys can check out the whole treasure trove of interviews that we've done with Anthony Clark when he was running in 2018, when he was an activist, standing in solidarity with so many progressive groups and grassroots activists. But let's keep it simple, because there's a lot I want to unpack, because you've been doing a lot since then, even getting attention of not one, but 3 presidential campaigns. So in regards to this, let's keep this really simple but lightning round. But I want to go in more depth into it later. Medicare for all, for it, yes or no?
100%.
All right. Addressing climate change.
100%.
All right. Student debt forgiveness.
100%.
Getting money out of politics.
Hell yes.
Willing to stand up to the establishment.
Hell yes.
All right. You know what? I think actually, here's the thing. I'm not surprised by these answers because he's been consistent. Like another politician. I dare I say it. Could you be the next Bernie Sanders?
Oh no, it's awesome. Again, you know, I think it's the old saying that you either stand for something or you fall for anything, and I think we're seeing that a lot heading into our 2020 presidential election year. We have a lot of individuals that aren't necessarily taking stands for the collective. They're more so pandering and positioning themselves for individual gain, and I don't think you benefit anyone that way. Okay, so in regards to that, I'm glad you mentioned that, because some time ago, Andrew Yang, or somebody associated with Andrew Yang's campaign, or supporter, to be more precise, I would say, reached out to your campaign and asked if they gave a donation to you, would you consider endorsing him for his message, or his candidacy to win the nomination? Right. And I would like you because you answered it directly, but could you just explain to our viewers and subscribers, your answer and your initial reaction to this? I mean, definitely. So as a 100% grassroots candidate, we're 100% against corporate PAC money. We're individually funded, but I think when individuals recognize that, particularly in a community like Illinois, a city like Chicago, which is extremely corrupt, which we're fighting against, they hope that they could take advantage of that, because they recognize it's an uphill battle for grassroots candidates. See, we're not going to have hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're not going to have millions of dollars. So they try to entice you with money. They try to entice you with support. So yeah, I mean, we get emails constantly. I think at least once or twice a week, someone will email offering something if we'll do something. But for me, at the end of the day, we're running. This race that we're in for the 7th Congressional District is bigger than just us. We play a role in a larger movement. So it's bigger than one individual, it's bigger than one race. And we truly believe heading into 2020, now is the time. We have people right now dying because they are too poor to live. Absolutely. Too poor to live. Yeah. And that should not occur in a nation that is as wealthy as ours. Right. Economic rights should be human rights, but they are not right now. So who am I to ever position myself before the movement? Right. So in that particular instance, an email was sent to us, again, who knows who they were, but they identified themselves as a supporter of Andrew Yang. Right, correct. Supporter of Andrew Yang. They offered, I think, $2,400 and stated that they would host multiple fundraising events for us because they identified our race as a race that has a platform and a race that's influential within the district of Chicago. And we have seen Andrew Yang, supporters around the area in regards to collecting signatures for him. So he does have somewhat of a following. But for me, I immediately responded, thanked the individual for reaching out and believing that, we do have indeed some influence, but we're 100% Bernie Sanders. So now it was running for the 7th Congressional District to go up against Danny Davis, somebody who has been in office for a very long time. In fact, his last campaign slogan was, Danny Davis, a name you know. Name you know. A name you know. Completely unoriginal, but nonetheless, though, you've also been active in protesting and standing solidarity with a lot of other activist groups. Correct. And recently, you went to South Bend, Indiana, which is the home territory of the quote-unquote strong fourth-place runner or new front runner, depending on which establishment media are you talking about Wall Street Pete?
Yeah, Wall Street P, where
Street
everyone's
P.
demanding a refund. So you were there. You actually interviewed people who lived in South Bend, Indiana, who dealt with Mayor Pete Buttigieg and his administration. So I think for our viewers and subscribers, I think it's very important to hear your perspective, not only as a congressional candidate, but also as an activist and someone who stands up for people who don't have the ability to stand up for themselves.
No.
What did you see there in South Bend, Indiana?
Definitely. Yeah, thank you for asking and raising that awareness. So for, again, you know, similar to tying into the email, we are fighting for our lives right now. And when you're fighting for your life, I don't have the privilege to pick or choose civility over justice.
Right.
When you're fighting for justice, civility is a tool of the oppressor.
Right.
Being patient, waiting is a tool of the oppressor. This is a fight. I'm not going to knock on the door. I'm going to kick it in, not only in support of Bernie Sanders, but also in support of calling out individuals that I do not believe are invested in revolution, are invested in progress. So along with the Andrew Yang email that we responded to saying, thanks, but no thank you, we're 100% for Bernie Sanders, I thought it was extremely important to be boots to the ground. You know, our revolution had a national event in South Bend, so I wanted to go. And then I thought to myself, while being there, why don't I hit the community? Why don't I see for myself what South Bend is like and hear directly from the community members of South Bend, particularly members of Black Lives Matter South Bend. So being boots to the ground, it was similar to what we see in Chicago, where you could literally cross a street and everything changes in regards to the level of opportunity that exists, the level of investment that exists within communities. So speaking to Jordan, shout out to Jordan of Black Lives Matter South Bend, and so many other individuals that spoke with us. You could check it out on our social media platforms, Anthony V. Clark 20, whether Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. We've posted these videos, but what they shared was a mayor that is more interested in downtown, the predominantly white areas, more interested in individual progress and growth than truly being boots to the ground and understanding the systemic issues that exist in their communities. And he's actually added to the systemic issues that existed with his inability to hold police officers on the ground accountable, with his inability to truly invest in, you know, civilian accountability, putting the communities in charge. And a perfect example of that was how Jordan shared that, you know, Mayor Pete, you know, pushed and sold the community on investing millions of tax dollars in police cameras. In police body cameras, because of course you think police body cameras, you think greater accountability. So they spend millions of dollars. These cameras get there, and then lo and behold, the community, predominantly Black community, did not realize that police have the ability, the autonomy to activate or deactivate their camera as they see fit. They're not automatically placed on when they're engaging with community members when they're out on patrol. So it was basically a waste of millions of dollars. Of course, he fired the police chief in South Bend, Indiana.
Due to the fact with the support of his lobby groups.
Exactly.
I mean, it's very important that we make that very clear.
Exactly.
Lobby groups told him to do that.
So this is an individual that is not listening to the Black community, but similar to the Democratic establishment, wants to use Black and brown and poor bodies for their advancement. So I didn't agree with that. And again, it wasn't about campaigning. It was just about providing a platform for individuals that are often spoke for, but seldom listened to.
Right. And now let's focus back onto the third presidential campaign that caught your attention or has gravitated towards you, and that's Bernie Sanders' campaign. And I know that you've been working in a little bit of collaboration with Our Revolution, so I'd like to know in regards to this about Bernie Sanders' race, because then I want to focus on the 7th Congressional District.
Yes, definitely.
What stands out different between 2016 to 2020, and why is it that you gravitate towards Bernie Sanders to get the nomination? What is it about his campaign, especially even now, that makes it so relevant?
Yeah, well, definitely, I think it's important. Again, I make I statements. I don't speak for anyone else, but I truly believe that by design, this nation is built upon capitalism, and capitalism is oppression. Oppression is capitalism. By design, you need a top and a bottom to maintain a capitalistic society that places profit before people. And what you have is racism, sexism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, all those isms that exist, all the identities, the othering that exists, that justify the vast disparities in wealth. You know, as Fred Hampton said, we're in a class war. It's the oppressed versus the oppressors. And the oppressors for years and years within a capitalistic society have utilized our differences and counted on us to remain separate, to look at our fights as individual fights, to maintain oppression. So what Bernie Sanders is a part of in the movement is similar to what Fred Hampton and the Black Panther Party were sharing. This is a class war. Yes, as individuals, we all have experiences, but one thing that unifies us is the universal language of struggle. We're all struggling within this class war. We all are experiencing poverty. We all are experiencing a lack of health care, inability to pay off our school loans or even attend school, a lack of livable wages, lack of job opportunities, lack of investment of our infrastructure, schools closures, food deserts, so on and so forth. We share these common experiences within the struggle. So in 2016, Bernie was speaking this language, that universal language of struggle, and it caught my attention. It spoke to me because until that time, I was jaded by politics. I felt like politicians didn't truly represent the people or understand that struggle. So heading into 2020, he is the only candidate pushing for revolutionary change, because when you understand capitalism, you understand by design that systemically our systems are broken.
Right.
They're broken. So you cannot talk reform. You cannot beat capitalism with capitalism. It doesn't work.
Right.
You know, so that's why I'm 100% behind Bernie Sanders, because I believe he's the only individual playing a role in this movement, running for president, that's truly pushing for revolutionary change. And I'm going to give everything I have, every ounce of my energy, all the time in the world to not only run for myself because we're playing a role, but to run for Bernie and to push his message into the communities of the 7th Congressional District.
I'm glad you mentioned the 7th Congressional District because we're going to talk about it. Now, during the 2018 midterm election cycle, I'm proud to say that you actually managed to scare the incumbent a little bit to actually start campaigning and get active again.
Definitely.
And of course, the incumbent is Danny Davis, a name you know. I mean, I don't know. Go figure. But so let's talk about the 7th Congressional District. What are some of the issues impacting it? And let's talk about the impact and legacy of Danny Davis, who's been in office for quite some time. Very sadly familiar story about all Illinois politicians who've been in office for decades now. So let's talk about the issues impacting the 7th Congressional District. Let's talk about Danny Davis and his interaction with constituents and why you are running in this race, especially now in 2020.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, what I tell people is I'm a military veteran, disabled military veteran. You know, I got out of the military in 2009 and transitioned into teaching. You know, I was shot in 2007, so I'm a survivor of gun violence. I also have an autoimmune deficiency, Behçet's disease. So again, that universal language of struggle, of course, exists within the 7th Congressional District. As someone who was born and raised within the 7th, who lives in the 7th, who teaches within the 7th, I've experienced and witnessed and observed those vast disparities in wealth and opportunity. You literally have in the 7th Congressional District where you could cross a street and the median income of, say, Oak Park is $80,000 to $85,000. The median income of, say, a River Forest is $100,000 to $120,000. But then you go east into the Austin community, which used to be the largest community within Chicago. Your median income is around $25,000 to $30,000.
An area that's also being gentrified.
Exactly, an area that's being gentrified, an area where community members that are bled in that community are leaving out in droves because of just a lack of opportunity that exists. You have school closures, you have food deserts, you have the pervasive epidemic of gun violence that continues to take lives. In my 11 years of teaching, I've lost 12 students to gun violence.
I'm very sorry that you've had to deal with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's real. And how many more? How many more are we losing because of violence, because of poverty? Homelessness is at an all-time high. Don't allow the data to fool you, because so many are not taking account for the individuals that are couch hopping, the individuals that are going from home to home. We have around 80,000 individuals that experience homelessness or housing insecurity, food insecurity, the food deserts and mental health facilities that are closed. So then we get to an incumbent who's been in that seat for over 20 years, in office for over 30, but in that present seat for over 20.
20 years. You know, he had an opportunity to do a lot of good.
Exactly. And I think it's a clear difference between an individual focused on maintaining status quo and their status, their personal status, and an individual that's boots to the ground, extremely bold, and fighting and pushing for change. And one way I could describe that is, in 2017, the incumbent was not for the legalization of cannabis with a focus on racial justice. We were. The incumbent was not for it. How can you not understand and see the interconnected systemic issues that the war on drugs and the prohibition of cannabis have played on predominantly Black and brown and poor communities?
Right.
So we pushed the incumbent because, again, it's not necessarily that they believe in this, but they want to survive. So then the incumbent transitioned to, okay, decriminalize, believe it at a state level. But again, that's not enough. because it's still inequitable. If you allow certain states, again, we're going to be legal in January 1st.
Right, January 1st will be a very... I will not be here, unfortunately, to enjoy it all for the next whole month, but you guys enjoy it for me, all the people of Illinois.
Please, light one up. Right. But now you have states like Wisconsin that are sending out edicts warning their community members that if you go into Illinois, you purchase and you come back to Wisconsin, know that our criminal justice system is waiting for you. That's not equitable. So we have to push for a federal legalization with a focus on racial justice and reparations. We're talking about an incumbent that if you look online and you YouTube Danny K. Davis and Arnie Duncan, Mr. Privatization with Rahm Emanuel, they had backroom meetings about school closures. And how many schools have been closed in our communities? How many of us recognize and understand how schools drive communities and communities drive schools, and then equity that exists in property taxes funding our public school systems? Right. But then this push for privatization that occurs, and we have an incumbent that plays, oh, I don't know what's going on. But yet you're having backroom meetings. And
this is the same, mind you, because we've interviewed a lot of congressional candidates so far since we've come to the studio, and they're dealing with the same issue. Some I've been fortunate to avoid this problem, but let's be very clear. The DCCC made it their slogan that they're going to support the incumbents.
Oh, no question.
And so what I want to ask you, and this is something we asked all the candidates, what has been their interaction with you? What kind of pushback have you gotten not only from the DCCC, but let's also call it out, the Illinois Democratic machine as an entity towards your campaign? Because you have a strong progressive message, and you have been making your voice very vocal, and a lot of people are gravitating towards your campaign.
Definitely. Of course. They try to ignore, similar to the voices that are ignored on a daily basis within our communities. They try to marginalize. They try to ignore. They try to pretend like you don't matter, like your movement doesn't exist. I mean, similar to a national scale with the media blackout of Bernie Sanders. That's Bernie Sanders. Yeah. So if the media could play a role in blacking him out, imagine what locally the DCCC and the Illinois Democratic Party can do. Right. So they avoid having debates. They avoid providing you with platforms. They harass you. They challenge you. In 2018, we had to spend $12,000 beating back a frivolous a signature challenge. Right. So they go through all of these and play all these games because, again, they're placing party first. They want you to be beholden to the Democratic Party when the Democratic Party should be beholden to the people. Right. We don't owe the Democratic Party anything. They should owe us something as working class and the poor. But that's not how the narrative is right now. So that's what we're trying to change. That's what we're fighting. And because we're bold, because we could care less, because we're kicking down doors, they can't ignore us forever. And we're starting, I think, to get ears that are listening and really paying attention to the movement.
Now, you there was some at least in 2018 where Danny Davis was hesitant to actually be in a debate with you.
Correct.
And I'm wondering now, because primaries will be in March, and then the people of the 7th Congressional District will decide who will go on to the general election. Correct. Has there been any attempt with your campaign and his campaign to hold a town hall, a debate, or interaction with constituents so they could see, like, okay, well, which candidate do I like? Has there been any kind of traction in it, or is there still radio silence?
No, heading into January, because again, there's been a lot going on. Self-care is extremely important. All those fighters out there that are boots to the ground, remember, self-care is extremely important. We've had a lot going on locally, as you know. Our 6 Democratic Socialist City Council members, those were major victories. A lot of things that DSA is doing on the ground. Shout out to DSA, 25th Ward IPO, Pilsen Alliance, so many, Rizoma Collective, so many wonderful organizations. People are tired, and it's understandable. We just went through, signature petition collection, turned that in. That took a lot of energy.
And I saw that on social media too. By the way, congratulations
thank you.
on that.
I appreciate that.
Because it's a monumental task to get that acknowledged in the state of Illinois, Cook County, and Chicago.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. So we're just recalibrating. Our team is resting. So many individuals are resting, but we're still out there. We're still boots to the ground, canvassing, so on and so forth. But we're recharging. And what we're looking to do in January is challenge all day, every day. If you want, I can meet him anywhere, anytime. Okay. Anywhere, anytime, in front of anyone, because it's important to get the message out to the people. Don't rest on your history, because we're fighting on the present and the future. Right. Don't rest on your past. So we're going to challenge him every week to a debate starting in January. We're going to call him out. We're going to call out anybody else in the race. Let's get in front of these cameras. Let's get in front of the people, share our message, and allow the public to decide who is best to represent the community moving forward, who's the best fighter pushing for change.
Absolutely. Now, I want to change things up a little bit. Recently, there's a lot of conversation, talk about the legalization and decriminalization of cannabis. And some time ago, you actually did an ad where you sat down and lit a you lit up basically.
Definitely.
And hey, I wish I was there with you. But nonetheless, besides looking at the very fact that you openly smoked cannabis, it's something a lot of people do. And the conversation idea of cannabis is starting to be embraced by a lot of people.
Correct.
And you brought a very strong message about why you support the legalization and decriminalization of cannabis. And for our viewers and subscribers, can you at least tell us your story about why you what made you do this in the first place, and two, the meaning behind it?
No, definitely. So without question, of course, as a teen growing up, and I'm not gonna say of course because not every teen, but for myself as a teen in the circle that I was in, we smoked cannabis. Right. When I entered into the military, that ceased, that stopped. But when I was shot in 2007, I was diagnosed with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and I went on a mental health journey. And it was a struggle, but I'm extremely open and transparent about my journey because I believe we have to eliminate all stigmas. Oftentimes we have to remove morality because we're fighting for humanity. So that was an extreme struggle for myself. But one thing that helped save me with in regard to PTSD and within regard to my Behçet's syndrome, which opioids were being prescribed to me, and I look at opioids, of course, as extremely toxic, was cannabis. Smoking cannabis helped my mental health journey, helped my mental health walk, and also helped my physical ailments that I experienced from Behçet's disease. It literally saved my life and continues to allow me to live a quality life, to be out there fighting on a daily basis. So that's my personal walk with cannabis. Right,
and I'll say this as one veteran to another, in regards to how the VA actually even gives us medicine to deal with stress or PTSD or any other kind of ailment, it usually, causes more problems.
No question.
And yet there's such a pushback towards cannabis and the good that it can do. And now that more people are realizing that it has more benefits that actually can relieve pain.
No question.
I think now more than ever, the very fact that it still continues to be viewed as this gateway drug is not only hostile, but it's a way to keep people still in pain, at least according to what the federal government's perspective.
No, and again, we recognize the role money plays in politics. We recognize the pharmaceutical companies that are purposely investing in misinformation campaigns, trying to vilify cannabis, trying to create further stigmas. We recognize this. So it's important for me to share my story, to share my truth, to help eliminate those stigmas. And then on top of that, we all recognize, hopefully, that the war on drugs is racist. Right. We have to completely end the war on drugs, and the push to legalize cannabis recognize the interconnected issue that existed with the war on drugs in maintaining slavery by another name, by disproportionately placing black and brown and poor bodies within our prison systems. Over flower, over a plant, over a medicine. So that's a huge issue. But now that it's becoming legalized, what do we see? There's not a stigma attached to these white faces with money that are going into business, that are starting these organizations and companies to profit the same way they profited off it when it was illegal. So we have to circumvent that. We have to end that. We have to fight back against it. And we have to say we cannot have legalization without the focus on racial justice and reparations. And I'll end it here as well. It's extremely important as a teacher now, because so many of our students are, again, dealing with high levels of anxiety, depression, pervasive gun violence on a daily basis. Many of them are self-medicating and not even recognizing it. Right. As a military veteran with PTSD, I recognize many of the same symptoms and manifestations within my students who have never been enlisted, who have never been to war. Right. So they don't even understand oftentimes why they may smoke or why they may drink, and having someone they could come to and trust and talk to that is genuine and real and help guide them through that process. Right. That's valuable.
Yeah, I will also say this too, because in regards to the situation that's in the city of Chicago, sadly, we are a hyper-segregated city.
Yes.
Economically, there are a lot of areas all across the city of Chicago that are basically being denied resources.
Definitely.
And, you when you think of children, what they have to deal with, I mean, it's now not only that, with the fact of being homeless, or the fact that they see a friend of theirs pass away, or that there's many other abuses that are take place. There's a lack of care that's happening in this country, and I think it's now more than ever that we have to overturn this. But there's also something else I want to do too, because you've been getting a lot of attention by our viewers and subscribers on our live stream chat, because we are live and you guys are making this show happen. We can't thank you guys enough. And I just want to read some comments, because a lot of people have been pretty impressed with what you've been saying, and you obviously have some fans here. So shout out from Kate. Literally ended watching the Heartlands Media stream, answered the phone, and it was Anthony Clark. He was calling people himself. Love your enthusiasm, Anthony. Then there's from Zian. Heartlands Media, you are doing a great job. Factual, insightful, and objective. Enough of the BS. Kinder, gentler obedience demanding neoliberalism. So we're not having that. Now, this is a question for you from Kate. What can be done to stop exponential deficit for underfunded pensions? It's used to bleed Cook County and Illinois dry. Do we ask the feds? Is there any answer?
Oh, I mean, that's a deep question. You know, that's going down that rabbit hole. That is a question that the majority of our politicians avoid. They simply kick the can down the road. So let's be clear, at a congressional level, generally, there's nothing, you know, that's below my purview, I guess, in the sense of running at a federal level. But you are right. You know, I think our workers, particularly our teachers, our public workers, our public servants, they have been promised their pensions.
Right.
And you should always 100% honor a promise. No question. All of our public servants deserve their pension. But I do believe as well, we are in a pension crisis. So I can't, again, Kate, I thank you for asking that question. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm an expert. But what I would say that no politician should avoid that question. No politician should be afraid to sit down and talk with individuals to try to come up with a solution that not only keeps a promise, right, but that addresses the issue. Because currently we're just reallocating funds, kicking the can down the road.
And there's a lot of hope for that casino that's going to be built, and then also cannabis legalization. But that's also unfair too, because it's going to not really.
They don't allocate the money the correct way. I mean, look at our lottery system. When our lottery system was first enacted, that money was supposed to go where? Educational system, so on and so forth. People dipped their hands into it, and it went elsewhere. So that's a wonderful question, Kate. You know, that's something that, again, at a congressional level, I'm not directly engaged in, but I recognize is extremely important. And there's something I'm going to look further into and investigate, because, again, no politician should avoid that question. No politician should just give a deadpan answer in a sense where everybody deserves their pension. Yes, they do. It's a promise. Right. But we also deserve to sit down with our hardworking individuals and come up with a solution. And I don't believe we have yet. No one has had that answer to date. And we're just going to continue to kick that can down the road. And eventually there's going to be no road left. And then what are we going to do? And
I'd add that on too, you know, Illinois, we're still recovering from our budgetary crisis from 2018.
Definitely.
And, you know, there's still a long, bumpy road that we still got to go down before this state can ever be, I guess, in the green again. No pun intended for January 1st, though. But also from our live stream chat, Myra Sanchez, Patreon supporter and good friend of the show, just said, "You rock."
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
Now, on top of that, too, I think you're the heavyweight champion in regards to being the most interviewed person.
You know, I was going to ask, did I get the record?
No, you have the record now. It's like, so basically, Daniel Biss, Andre Vasquez,
yes,
Eric Goldstein, like, you're beaten. Do you have anything you want to say to those three?
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I'm coming for you fools. I got the record. I'm the best. You can't beat me. You can't see me. But no, that was a little bit Ali impression. But no, you know, again, you know, from the bottom of my heart, you know, I think it's extremely important to shout out the work that Heartlands Media has done and continue to do. Because when I was just simply a teacher, you know, we're all normal individuals, but normal individuals could do extraordinary things when we're tired, when we're ready to fight. But when I was just a teacher, when I was just a nonprofit director that no one heard of, Heartlands provided me a platform. When everybody was saying no, Heartlands continued to say yes. I honestly would not be where I am right now without the help and support of Heartlands Media. So if you believe in grassroots, if you believe in revolution, if you believe in fighting, you need to believe in Heartlands Media, and I mean that. So whenever you all call, I'm always going to be there.
Well, first, I'm humbled by that, and not to mention, too, to all the activists that we've interviewed in the past from 2017 onward, to all the candidates, grassroots organizers, third-party candidates that want to bring in change. You know, you guys actually inspire us. You know, we're just here commentating. We're here reporting on things. But the one thing that we're seeing people step up and fight for that better future. And I believe in your campaign. I believe you have what it takes to really bring in much-needed change. You've been consistent. Never once have I seen you flip-flop or backpedal away. But I also want to bring up something else too from our super chats, and that is a good friend of our show, DCK Punk. For progressive vets on Heartlands Media, we'll give $10 to your campaign. So he's saying he's going to give $10 to your campaign.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mike Concho, it's amazing how much quality content you guys provide with so little resources. You guys, our viewers, made this happen. This studio is because of them. Anthony Clark keeping pushing forward is because of his supporters and his constituents hearing his message. So you guys really are making it happen, and you guys want to fight for a better future. Your actions are doing this. Cannabis Sativa, nothing to really say, but he just said
I'm sativa all day, by the way, so shout out to you. I'm not indica. No hate on individuals that smoke indica, but I'm sativa all day.
All right, and we got Zcan, this is more of a Tulsi Gabbard supporter. He basically support for Tulsi doesn't prelude to burn. She just turned up the heat in 2016, hasn't stopped since. $5 for the sister and bro vets. Tulsi for president of the United States. And we have such a wide range of variety of supporters here. Definitely. And so, you know, when we veterans are talking to each other, I think it's very important that we actually, I'm glad it's a good segue into veteran politics because in regards to what's happening here in the United States, veteran suicide rates are up.
All time.
Veterans are struggling every single day. And, you know, when I see somebody like you, who's also a fellow veteran, step up and actually try and want to bring in much needed political change, it gives me hope. Yes. That you know, there's potential for us. But at the same time, too, there's a whole system that's not helping us. So what is your policy and plan to really help out veterans and their families that are still struggling in a system that really doesn't care, but yet we hear from corporate media, support the troops, support the troops, support the troops, but nothing from them.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's extremely interesting how, you know, we're currently in a country to where patriotism is presented in a certain light.
Right.
Where patriotism means essentially for many people warmongering, you know, attacking democracies in other countries and other territories. Look what's happening in Bolivia or happened in Bolivia,
right,
so on and so forth. So as a active duty military veteran, you know, I would like to say first and foremost, shout out to all our veterans that are served. Shout out to all our disabled veterans. But I'm going to let you know, I am not a war hero. I didn't join the military to be a patriot. Many individuals, I want to put that out there and put that narrative out there. I truly believe that the military is one of our biggest welfare states. Think about what the military offers. It offers education, pays for it, offers housing, it offers a job, it offers stability.
Right.
So many individuals that are struggling within their communities, oftentimes running from something, running from violence, running from lack of opportunity, the military is that option that exists. So that's why I entered in. You know, I was in some trouble. I needed a way out. I needed to escape, and I entered into the military. But I believe in ending all wars. I believe diplomacy first, but I also believe in supporting our troops and supporting our veterans that exist, because not all of them are entering to kill. Not all of them are entering to be, you know, super soldiers. They just want to live. They just want an opportunity, and the military often provides that. But what happens is, similar to my father, you know, over 70-year-old male, served in Vietnam, was exposed to Agent Orange. He served his country as a black male, a country that has never served him. He lived through segregation, lived through Jim Crow. But what's happening now is ridiculous. So first and foremost, I think we need to call out this current administration's push to privatize our services. That is a huge issue that exists. Often our services are now going to companies that have no experience with veterans, do know how to work with veterans, do know how to speak our language, and don't understand our fight and our plight. And it's ridiculous. They cut my father's disability income by $300. Simply by switching to privatization and having an organization that it was now focused on, instead of helping him and supporting him, how can we cut back funds? How can we cut back support and services? So that's what they were focused on.
Yeah.
And that leads to struggle. As you stated, suicide and suicidal ideation rates, death by suicide, is extremely high with veterans, who again are serving and are exposed and over inundated with violence and so many tragedies, and come home to a community that should be real patriotism. Caring about your veterans, being there for them, catching them when they fall, providing them with training, providing them with comprehensive mental health support, placing them in a job, making a livable wage. How many veterans do we know that are actually working but are functionally homeless because they have a job that is not making a livable wage?
Right.
It's a huge issue. So again, I'm 100% against privatization of everything, whether that be education, whether that be prison systems, and whether that be veterans care and veteran services. So we have to eliminate privatization. We have to bring back our funding and support for VA centers, because they provide such wonderful. I go to Hines VA Medical Center. Shout out to everyone from Hines who's provided me with wonderful care, but you see that care eroding based upon the funding that is now going to private institutions that place profit first. Yeah. So that's a huge issue. I also think that there should be no veteran that's homeless. We should end homelessness across the board,
you know,
as is.
I'm glad that you brought that up.
But there should be no veteran homeless.
I'm very glad you brought that up, because, you know, living on the south side of Chicago, I drive up here to the north side to the studio, and I love driving up here. It's great. Right. It's doing this show, having great co-hosts like Daniel and Paul and the rest of the team, Lainey, Yasmin. It's just been great how things have been so far. But at the same time, too, leaving from the south side, going to the north side, and especially going to the city, you see a clear disparity of wealth. You see it, and on top of that too, I'm starting to see this more and more, and it's very concerning. more people living under the viaducts, more people living on these bridges, more people living on the streets.
And many of them are veterans.
And many of them are veterans, but also many of them are people who are homeless due to medical bills or certain other situations that are clearly out of their control. And it's becoming a real big problem because this city that's filled, I believe it, this city is filled with good people. The Chicago is filled with good people. There's hope here. But how do we make sure that the people are treated with humanely and with respect? Because there is a good chance that you can win this congressional race and actually beat Danny Davis and bring in much needed change.
Definitely.
How do we introduce this to a Congress that has 11% approval rating? That same Congress that's right now calling to impeach Trump. Granted, Trump is a bad person and all, but yesterday they just voted in favor of his military defense budget. 188 Democrats and 189 Republicans just agreed on a bipartisan bill
with that Space Force.
With the Space Force.
We're not investing in our educational systems, but we got money for space, the new frontier. Again, every issue that we face is interconnected. There's root causes. For example, Trump is a symptom. Trump is not a root cause. He is a symptom by design. So when we talk about veterans, if we're truly fighting for healthcare as a human right, housing as a human right, shout out to the Homes Guarantee, a federal jobs guarantee, all connected in. Of course, Bernie Sanders and the wonderful Congresswoman AOC came out with the Green No Deal housing plan. These are all functional issues and answers to our questions, our biggest concerns, because again, we're creating jobs, we're providing housing. So many veterans, whether they're homeless or they have to travel, they often have to travel far distances to their VA centers to get help. If healthcare was free, look how that would systemically change their experiences. If housing was a human right, look how that would change the veteran experience. But again, true patriotism is focusing and making sure and ensuring that our veterans get the best care possible. We're sending them off to die. We're sending them off to war. We're sending them off to kill. And then when they come home, we treat them as if they're dispendable. That they don't have any value. And we have to change that. But again, I truly believe if we're fighting for Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, housing as a human right, federal jobs guarantee, if we look at everything, even again, looking at expanding Social Security benefits, all this plays a role in supporting our veterans and supporting all individuals within our society. Because again, economic rights are human rights.
All right. I think that's a very important note that I want to bring up too. And that is, you've been consistent for a very long time fighting and going up against the corruption of the Democratic machine here in the state of Illinois, running in 2018 and even now running in 2020. There are some people who are still hesitant to get involved, perhaps sitting in the sidelines, choosing not to get involved because there are many people who think, well, why should I vote? Why does it matter? It's never going to work. What do you want to say to people right now who are sitting in the sidelines?
There's an analogy I utilize. And again, because I think too often people are still steeped in their own identity, in their own struggle, in their own fight. And the analogy I utilize is if you look out your window and you see your neighbor in their time of need and you close your blinds and you don't open your door, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be the next day, it may not even be the next year, but eventually you're going to be in need. But because you didn't help your neighbor in their time, there's going to be no one left to help you. Again, this is a class war. You cannot sit back and look at the issue that our immigrant populations are facing, that our undocumented community members are facing, and then tell yourself, because I'm not undocumented or because I don't consider myself an immigrant, that issue doesn't matter to me. You can't look at the issues that are going on across our country with the systemic violence that our police are placing on black and brown bodies and saying, well, I'm not black, I'm not brown. Blue lives matter to me. The police serve me, so that issue doesn't matter. You can't look at the pervasive issue that women face within the workforce, within their society, with rape culture, sexism, so on and so forth, trans women, the violence they face on a daily basis, and say, well, I'm not a woman, I'm not trans. If you understand this is a class war, oppression is going to eventually find you. And that's what we have to understand. So it's better to step up now in solidarity in the intersectional movement and help your neighbor. Because if you help your neighbor and we fight for true systemic change, you won't need help. Because we've ended it, we've addressed it. But too often we're too comfortable. And then we get caught up in when we want to respond, we want to place civility first. So when we march, we always are getting permits. It's always on a Saturday or Sunday when the economy is at a low. We're not really disturbing anybody. So we get to go out there with our drums, with our music, and have a concert and have a good time, take some pictures, put it on Facebook, put it on Instagram, get some likes, and call ourselves allies. An ally is not a noun. An ally is a verb. You got to earn that ish.
Right.
You got to earn it from the people that are directly oppressed. So I want to challenge individuals I'm going to challenge you. If you're listening now, whenever you listen, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, what are you willing to risk and sacrifice for true systemic change? Because if not, again, that oppression may not be at your doorstep today, or better yet, it may not ever get to your doorstep. But how are you going to feel if it gets to your child's doorstep or their child's doorstep?
Right. Or as what I like to say in the show, don't be that person who says that they wish they could have helped.
Exactly. Help.
Yeah, help. And the thing is help. Yeah, and the thing is we all want to help each other and see each other succeed. And I know you've been doing a phenomenal work with a lot of activist groups, and not to mention with your campaign. So I think a final question for our viewers and subscribers. One, where can they learn more about you so you can, hey, I want you to win the 7th Congressional District.
Yes,
and so if they want to know where they can find your campaign website, but also the names of any other groups or activist groups that you're with, where can they learn more about them online so they can help them out too?
Definitely. So our website is voteanthonyclark.com. That's our campaign website. You can learn about our extensive platform. We're fighting for everything, including the decriminalization of sex work, not the Nordic model. Want to shout that out. Our social media platforms, whether Twitter or Instagram, is Anthony V. Clark 20. You can definitely follow us on there. We're constantly fighting and pushing. And again, I'm not anything. This is a not me. This is a us movement. Not me, us. This is a us movement. So I'm nothing without the community. I just want to shout out, and if I forget anybody, I apologize, but I want to shout out Democratic Socialists of America. I want to shout out 25th Ward IPO. I want to shout out Rizoma Collective. I want to shout out Our Revolution. I want to shout out Brand New Congress. I want to shout out Desiree Alliance. I want to shout out Cori Bush, Paula Jane Swearengin, Amy Villela. There's so many more. The People for Bernie Sanders. Like, we're endorsed by like 15 different organizations.
And it's a very large coalition.
Right. Democracy for America. It's a very large coalition. Shout out to the 6 Democratic Socialists that are in city council right now. They're fighting tooth and nail on a daily basis. So we're out here. We're building coalitions. Shout out to the Institute of Nonviolence Chicago on the west side. There's so many. One OPARC call to action. I could go on, literally on and on. Best of Proviso Township, the work that they're doing on a daily basis in the Maywood and Berwyn community and Bellwood community. There's so many wonderful coalitions that we're part of, and I would be nothing without them. So I sincerely want to salute everyone and thank them for allowing me to play a role in the work that they're doing.
All right, just actually 2 more things real quick.
Sure.
From our super chat, Sarah Min, preach it, no privatization of essential services.
No.
That's from our live stream audience. And then number 2, let's just do a quick lightning round one more time.
Sure.
Single payer medical for all, for yes or no?
Human right, yes.
All right, absolutely. All right. Student debt forgiveness.
Yes.
Getting money out of politics.
Hell yes.
Dealing with climate change.
Hell yes.
You're gonna win in 2020.
Hell yes. We're gonna win.
Absolutely. That's a perfect note to end on. Anthony Clark, I think the new heavyweight champion, being the most interviewed person.
I told you. I told you.
I want to thank you so much for being on this show.
Appreciate it.
I wish you all the best for your campaign. I
Thank
think
you
now
all so
more
much.
than ever, you are a real essential voice to bring in much needed change.
Thank you.
All the best for your campaign. I know March. When is the day for primary?
So the primary election is March 17th, but also be on the lookout for early voting, which will start, a couple weeks before March 17th, and also mail-in ballots. But let's go. All power to the people.
That's a good note to end it on. This is Anthony Clark. He is running for the 7th Congressional District against the incumbent, Danny Davis. Anthony Clark, all the best to your campaign. My name is Kip Cabello. Peace, everyone. Let us all do what we can to build a better future. Tune in to Heartlands Media next week.